Special interview right now. Bob Behler sitting in for Johnny Ballgame alongside Mike Prater, JP across the glass, and sitting between us, one of the all-time great Broncos, quarterback Jared Zabransky, who led the team to the win in the Fiesta Bowl. Jared, great to see you.
Hey, Bob, thanks for having me.
Well, tell us, you're going to be the Blue Chaos guy. You're raising the flag coming up on Friday. We've got a good group, and I know Prater and Johnny have done a great job, getting them on the show so we can kind of catch up with the guys that are raising the flag. So thought when they asked you to come back and do it for this game.
Oh, it's an honor. Anytime I can get back and just be around the program, come watch a game or go to practice, it's special. It brings back a lot of obviously very fond memories. But getting an honor like this and then being able to share it with my family and friends and I don't know what the entirety of it entails, but it should be pretty cool. I know I'm raising a flag. Yeah. I'm going to get
It happens a couple of minutes before kickoff. I can tell you that. And you got to be ready to hoist it up and, try to pump up the crowd a little bit. So I think you can do all that pretty good.
I think I still have a little bit in the tank getting the crowd excited.
But are you athletic enough to raise the flag? I mean, you were an okay athlete back in the day, joking aside. And, there needs to be a technique. And I don't know if you saw Sanford last week. You put a lot of energy into it, a lot of fist pumps. Have you been working on the fist pump a little bit?
The fist pump, I might have something if they let me out those gates. There might be a little extra.
I think you got the decibels up to like 101, 102. I'm expecting 103 to 105 for you.
Go.
Can you make that happen?
Let's go.
All right,
Jared. Take the challenge.
Jared Zabransky in town this week with family holidays and Boise State football. Boise State taking on Air Force at 2:00 on Friday. Mountain West Championship implications, and it's going to start with Blue Chaos and Jared Zabransky taking care of business. So let's dive into Boise State football a little bit. You overlapped 2 or 3 years with Andy Avalos, and I know you've kept a close eye on this football team. Let me ask with just a broad overarching question. From your point of view, and you're still living in Texas, still a businessman, still an entrepreneur, family man, and we'll get to all that too. But what are you observing with this Boise State football team? It's been a really, really weird season.
It has. A ton of respect for Andy. I mean, the guy, the way that he carried himself on the field, off the field, in training, he was a lead by example guy. He wasn't a big rah-rah guy. He was a let me work my tail off and rally the guys around me. That's kind of always been his mantra as I knew him. And I've been able to stay in touch with him over the years and followed his success and was and totally still in support of Andy as a man and a father and a Bronco. I'm at 20,000 feet now, right?
Yep.
It's not. I'm not in the minutia with all the details and understanding the inner workings. I do feel for the situation that he was brought into and had to wade through. COVID, NIL, transfer portal, all of that stuff, unprecedented. So very, very tough path there. There is something to be said about having to deal with that, but what is expected with the blue field in this program, and that's a lot of wins.
I think you described him perfectly, and I've used a couple of those same exact words in my columns, and love and respect and appreciate him as a man. As a coach, I felt like, and you talked to him about as a player. As a coach, I thought he was very businesslike, a little tough, a little tight sometimes, a little too tight, was afraid to kind of color outside the lines a little bit. And structure and discipline is important, but we also, the two magic words you've talked about in college football today are NIL and the transfer portal. And it's a me first generation. And what can you do for me now? So do you feel like there was a clash of styles in terms of what Andy Avalos wanted to be as a head coach and what college football and student athletes want to do in terms of their future and their rights and how they proceed as college football players?
I don't know enough information to answer that question with an educated answer. I know for a fact that if we don't pay up, we're not going to play up, and that's just the nature of this beast right now.
NIL,
100%. If we don't have an avenue to get these players onto our fields, it's not going to matter what we're building around here as far as the structure is concerned.
Yeah.
And it's goes beyond the players too, right? We've got to be able to pay the coaches. So we got to come up with, and I know Darren and crew and a bunch of people within the administration and the front office is working tirelessly to try to figure that out. But time is of essence. And you're seeing schools like UNLV and schools like San Jose State and some of these other markets able to pay some players and put in some. I mean, I watched a game start of this season. My cousins, quick side story. I've got 2 cousins that start on the O-line for Baylor.
Okay.
They transferred from BYU, the Barrington brothers. I go down there and they're playing Texas State. Well, Finley is Texas State's quarterback. He was a true freshman, started at LSU, transferred to Auburn. I don't know what happened kind of in the early years of his career, but then ends up at Texas State. He's not ending up at Texas State without some money.
Yeah.
And he's arguably had the best performance of a college quarterback I've ever seen in person. Texas State beating a Big 12, perennial Big 12 player like that Baylor is, like that team is always in a title hunt. And you're seeing this shift in college football. And we've got a pretty unique opportunity. And I perceive things as opportunities. If there's a challenge or an obstacle, there's an opportunity behind it. We have an awesome opportunity as a program, as a university, to adapt to these changes, be an adopter of them, and to grow within it. There's some big corporations around here, and there's some guys that have made some money and there's some different ways that I've heard some creative thoughts and some creative plans, kind of at the forefront. I'm excited to see those implemented and executed.
You and I had I wrote a column a couple of weeks ago on NIL, and you and I had a quick conversation after that and trying to figure out how Boise State can take it to the next level. Because there is a little bit of stuff here and there, but a lot of it's like, a lunch and pizzas and a car. And we're not talking about a ton of cash, although there's a little bit of cash and it's growing. This town has money and this town has
100%.
Emotional connections to Boise State, but those two things aren't really clicking as fast as they probably should be. And I think maybe that was where some of your frustration is how can we get these players more money? How can Boise State, even though they're doing a great job, and Mike Walsh and that crew down there have done a beautiful job of laying the infrastructure of NIL, but the people here are blue collar and they don't really necessarily think that college football players should be paid. Corporations maybe so. How can we get more money into the hands of Boise State football players? You would have made a killing, by the way.
Yeah,
I know you made a little jack with that video game cover.
I didn't make nearly as much as Boise State made from that, though.
Exactly. You brought that up a few times, but dude, in an NIL world, holy crap, you would have made some cash. How can we get these kids some more cash?
Well, I think you got to be creative. I think you got to look at it from a perspective of a strategic partnership with some of these alliances, whether that's a large corporation, whether that's a Simplot, an Albertsons, or a Micron, or some of these startups that have turned into 9-figure revenue generating corporations. How do we create a strategic partnership where there's a real return on investment? And I'm talking about at the advertising level, but also at the personal level. I mean, you got to find, everybody has something within them that makes them tick. Everybody's got desires and wants and needs. Create a strategy to develop something that is a long-term partnership where the corporations and the people within these corporations feel like there's a real return. And you're right. You don't necessarily have to write, $100,000 salaries or clip off everybody but what if, like I think we talked about the Utah truck deal.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
There's got to be something within there where these kids are getting, they're getting a car, a lease, stuff like that is life-changing for a lot of these kids. I know at Baylor, they all got 10 grand when the season started and they got 2 suits and
wow.
And my cousins were like, wow, this is awesome. That's 15 grand. You run down the list and you got 90 or 100 players. There's enough money in this valley where you could duplicate that easily. And I think it just takes, and I know, and I'm talking out of left field a little bit here because I don't, like I shared, I'm not in the inner workings, and I know some creative thought is been at play, and there have been some good things going on. But I would urge the program to not look at building buildings, build the program, and build the program by catching up with what the rest of the country is doing and compensating these players who are generating tens of millions of dollars of revenue for the program and for the university. Because if you don't, you're not going to have people to put in those buildings.
It's a very interesting thought.
You're listening to Jared Zabransky in town to be the Blue Chaos guy for Boise State on Friday. And Jared, the most memorable game of your career, obviously, is the Fiesta Bowl, winning for Boise State. So in that game, you had a ton of highs and lows, from interceptions to touchdowns. This season for Boise State has had a lot of highs and lows. So what's your advice to players when things aren't always going swimmingly for them, either in a game or games or the season, to stay, to persevere, and to be in the end triumph?
Well, I tell my son Rowan and my daughter in here and the youth football team, it's not what happens to you, it's about how you respond. And you look at any great story in any history book, whether that's the civilization history, war history, sports history, the stories that are remembered the most are through adversity and triumph, through perseverance over adversity. These guys have an unbelievable opportunity in front of them to write a very unique story. They've got an opportunity to do something great. And it takes, in my opinion, 5 pillars. It takes a great attitude. Attitude is completely 100% in our control. No one else can take or give. That's a choice. It takes commitment at a very, very high level, and it takes commitment from every one of the players. So you have to have a 100% buy-in. On top of that commitment, it takes consistency, and it takes accountability within that consistency, and holding each other accountable and having some hard conversations. That's what we did that summer in 2006. There were a lot of tough conversations, but there were conversations that needed to be had. It takes a high level of effort, another thing that's completely in an individual's control. And then what we've always been great at around here are the details. And you have to, if you're running a 100-yard sprint, that's the assignment. You run 101. If you got 4 sets of 6 reps on the bench, you're doing 5 sets. That was my mentality. As Prater said, I was a decent athlete. And I think that was a little tongue in cheek.
A little bit.
But I was willing to outwork whoever. And it was because that was my mentality. And I knew if I gave my best effort, there was no question. I left no question. And I could feel good about looking myself in the mirror at the end of the day, knowing I gave my team everything that I had. And if our guys do that, those 5 pillars, you enter the door with a smile on your face, you work your freaking tail off, and you're doing it for the guys next to you. And those other 3s, commitment, consistency, and doing all that stuff with a very, very specific fine-tooth comb, and making sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's with the details.
Jared Zabransky, former Boise State legendary quarterback, still a part of the Boise State football family. He's in town. He's joining us here in the Idaho Sports Talk studio. We certainly want to dive into your life, what you're doing now in Houston. You got 2 beautiful children here and some pretty cool stories to share. But I wanted to ask you one quick question, and I have no idea where this is going to go, because I don't think you and Bush Hamdan ever overlapped. So I don't know.
No, we did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. I had Bushy for 2 years.
Okay, so you know him a little bit. Maybe a lot.
I know him pretty well. Yeah.
He's done a hell of a job.
I love it.
30-plus points, 9 consecutive games. Only Oregon's done that more. He's juggled an underachieving wide receiver room. He's juggled running backs. He's juggled quarterbacks. He's taken positive heat. He's taken negative heat, and he's still getting the job done. So what's in the DNA of Bush Hamdan?
A lot of it starts with Bush. Those 5 pillars, Bush has the absolute best attitude. He's like the guy that you want to see. If you're feeling any sort of way and you see Bush, you're going to have a smile on your face. Just a positive, upbeat, naturally glass half full, pathologically positive guy. And then Coach Pete.
Yeah. Pretty good influence there.
And Coach Pete is ingrained in all of us. So Bush and Taylor Tharp, Coach Pete, Kellen, and I all have got a text thread going on. And we wish them good luck. And we chat back and forth. And they've seen some of Rowan's clips. And it gives them a chance to remember what it was like before it got so serious. But just wishing those guys, the utmost success in all of their endeavors. I've stayed pretty close with Bush over the years. He's got a great offensive mind. He really does. And and I think what Coach Pete really taught us all, and I know Bush has learned from others as well, but Coach Pete, there was always an answer. And that system was kind of West Coast based, but it was an open offensive schematic system. And there was always an answer. And you would scheme it up and beat certain coverages. But if it was a different coverage, there was an answer. And Bush has got a really awesome way of connecting with people. I know for a fact that quarterback room loves him, just because I know Bush. So love the guy.
Now, going into your senior year, that's when Coach Hawkins left at the end of your junior year, and Coach Pete was elevated. First thought when you heard that Coach Pete was going to be the guy?
Big deep breath.
Yeah, that was it, man. It was I've seen some old footage, and like a stupid college student or a football player would have wearing sweats, because we wear sweats every day. I wish I'd have worn some more jeans and some button downs, but no, it was just like it was a breath of fresh air. It really was. Things get stagnant, and things get stagnant in sports, and when the philosophy is not working any longer, it's tough to get. I talked about that buy-in. And culture is used a lot, but we have a really, really unique culture here, and it's been that way for a long time. I've had lunch with Darren and Brian Smith. And it started before Brian, but that 91 and 95 crew with Brian and Tony Hildy.
Yep.
And I told Brian, I kind of classify the different groups by the quarterback. So it was Tony, and then it was Bart, and then it was Ryan, and then it was me, and then it was Flicks had a little spot in there, and then it was Kellen, and then it was Rip, right?
Well, Grant Hedrick.
Grant in between, Grant,
Yep.
and then Rip. But those are some damn good quarterbacks in there, right? And those were some really, really good football teams. Yep. So it started a long time ago, and man, it's been an awesome run, and what they have in front of them is an opportunity to turn this thing around and to have another really cool story. You guys remember that year that they went? Hopefully it ends up 8-5. Guys, one of the biggest reasons why the Fiesta Bowl was what the Fiesta Bowl was because we go 11-0. Andy's senior year, my first year as a sophomore, we go 11-0 and lose in a shootout to an unbelievable Louisville team in the Liberty Bowl. First undefeated season as a D1 program. We going into Georgia. You remember that game, Prater?
Oh yeah.
So we're going into Georgia. We're ranked 16. They're ranked 14. All of this big hype, preseason hype. Boise State this, Jared Zabransky that. I think I was on the, top 20 list for the best college football. Blah 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 blah. Everybody's buying the hype, myself included. Right on our face, right? And then we have some struggles that year, and take some lumps, and take a lot of bumps, and some flack from my guy. Mike here.
I may have said a few things,
and deservingly so, because we were stellar in 2004. We really were. We were fantastic, and we should have been, if not as good, pretty dang close. And our chance was that Georgia game to really put Boise State on the map, right? And we fell on our face. But you have to go through something like that, some really challenging times, some really hard adversity, to really learn and to grow and to get yourself in a place where those things happen again. You've got the tools to get yourself through them.
Without some of those lumps, that Fiesta Bowl probably doesn't happen, just based on what you said. Wish we could talk to you forever. I love this conversation, but I do want to ask before we move on, just about what you're doing now. You're in the Texas area. You brought a couple of your family members. Tell us about your family. Tell us about your job. What are you doing these days, E?
Well, my wonderful children here, Savannah Rose, she's just turned 12, and Rowan Jacob, two of the newest Zabranskys. They're my wife. So I am in the Woodlands, Texas still, kind of back and forth between there and here. We still got D1 Boise going out here.
Yep.
Got some awesome promos going on. So you look us up on Instagram. Got a great staff out there, a bunch of great coaches. We are looking to open our second franchise location here in the Boise area in Nampa.
Nice.
And we got one operating in Spring, Texas, and we'll be opening our fourth in the Ridgeland, Katy area in Texas. And we've got 4 more markets to open after that. So a lot of blessings, a ton of blessings. I am grateful to be here. Coming up on about a year sobriety.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So December 31st, 2022 was my last drink. So
you look great. You look fantastic.
It's been life-changing.
You could still sling the football 65 yards, or is that a potato? You can remember those stories back in the day?
It was a football 65, Prater, but it was a potato 100.
Oh, once again, Prater, get your facts right. Brother, it's been great. It's always fantastic when we catch up with you. It's always one of the highlights of the year, and love what you're doing. Love that we keep in touch. Love that you keep in touch with the Boise State community, and do your best to raise that flag on that. No ups and downs on Friday. It's 100% effort, and that fist pump, dude. Don't forget that fist pump.
Prater, I love you, man.
Love you, brother.
We need to see Magic Giant again.
Let's do it.
I would love to.
Well, one of our favorite bands. I talk about Magic Giant all the time on this show, and people think I'm a crazy weirdo, but great band.
I really appreciate you inviting me and being on the show, Mike and Bob. Thank you.
Appreciate it. When we come back, we probably find out who the top 4 are in college football. They should have been releasing that as we were talking to Z. That's next on Sports Radio, The Ticket.
From the Beacon Plumbing Traffic Studios.